episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, joined this week by Will Denner, and we're coming to you from the Columbian offices in downtown Vancouver for our first episode after spring break. And Will, how did you enjoy your spring break?
It was good. Still found a couple games to get out to, a few stories to write, obviously including one that we'll be talking about today. But yeah, it was good overall. Unfortunately, the weather is kind of what we expected here in the Pacific Northwest, but excited to get back into a full slate of spring sports here and kind of keep things rolling.
Well, before we get going, I got to give a shout out to one of my favorite local organizations, Courts for Kids, founded by Derek and Celine Nesland. I spent my spring break in Panama with Courts for Kids and a group of high school students from Columbia River and Union High Schools. We teamed with a community in Rio Sereno, Panama, to build an outdoor sports court, and we got it done, and we're the recipients of some amazing hospitality, amazing food, and amazing landscapes.
Yep.
That was just a real treat that my daughter and I were able to share in that. So big shout out always to Courts for Kids, but we're here to talk some baseball, and specifically one special girl in baseball who you profiled recently, Maile Wong. She's a junior infielder on the Evergreen varsity baseball team, becoming the first girl to suit up for that varsity program. Obviously a program that's been around for decades and has a long history. But tell me, Will, about how you learned about this story and sort of what made it special to report, because the measurements we've been seeing, it's really gotten a lot of great feedback and response just on people like, oh, number one, I didn't know girls could play baseball, and number two, this seems like a pretty exceptional person to take on that challenge.
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of goes back to last year around this time. Actually, I did a story on another girl who plays high school baseball here in Clark County up in Ridgefield, Natalie Evans, who's now a senior. And talking to her last year, I had just asked, just kind of, during the interview, like, do you know of any other girls in the area who play? And she mentioned Maile Wong at Evergreen, somebody that the two had connected previously, just because it's kind of this rare group that is in this position. So I think a lot of girls kind of look out for each other and like to kind of share and trade their, experiences and stories. But at the time, Maile had taken that year off. This was last year, and so I had just kind of honestly filed it away. I hadn't really thought about it, and then lo and behold, this year, our colleague Tim Martinez mentions that Maile Wong is back playing baseball at Evergreen. And not only that, but she's playing varsity. She's appearing in every game and really making an impact as a second baseman and as a hitter. And it just felt like it was a great time to get out and do this story. So talked to Evergreen coach Chad Burchett a couple weeks ago, just approached him about the idea of doing this story. And he was super on board, and so was Maile, and had the chance to talk to them both. And another Evergreen player as well. And it was great just kind of hearing her story. I think every girl's path through baseball is obviously a little different, and it's always super unique and compelling, just because it's something, again, that not a lot of people have pursued, but the ones who do and the ones who stick with it, I think it's always an amazing story of perseverance and resilience, and obviously in the face of some challenges along the way as well. But we'll get into it more. But she's I think she's really been kind of an inspiring person, not only for her teammates at Evergreen, but other people around Evergreen as well. And it was really a pleasure to talk to all of them about this.
So to put it in perspective, according to the NFHS participation survey for the 2023-24 school year, approximately 1,400 girls nationwide are playing high school baseball. But like you said, only 2 in the area. And one of the questions that I guess comes up, first of all, is what draws an athlete like Maile to baseball when obviously their softball is the route that most high school girls go if they want to play a diamond sport?
Right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. It varies for everyone, and but I've found, at least in just talking to both Maile and Natalie, is that they don't necessarily see it as like a one versus the other thing. I think it was just kind of something, baseball was just something in their lives from a young age that they gravitated to. I think family influence had a lot to do with it. In Miley's case, she has two brothers that she grew up playing baseball with. I think even played on the same team as one, if not both of them. And for Natalie Evans, she remembered, like, as a kid going to a New York Mets game with her mom and really just kind of falling in love with baseball. And I remember her saying, like, picked up a softball one time and was just like, "What is this?" and just like threw it away. It's like, so obviously there's different, slightly different rules, and the size and scales of softball versus baseball is obviously a little different. But I just think it just kind of comes down to something for them, at least, that was introduced in their lives at a young age, and it's something that just kind of felt right and natural to them. And while softball has some of the same principles and beats, obviously, as a diamond sport, I think just baseball for them made the most sense.
Well, I think one thing we need to make very clear about Miley's case is that she's not one of these players that just kind of sits on the end of the bench and gets in, in the late innings or in blowouts. She's appeared in every game this year.
Yeah.
She's gotten multiple hits and plays the middle infield, where you can certainly see her agility is a asset in that position, and something that you need to have. Basically, from your reporting of the story, is she looks and plays the part.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was interesting kind of hearing all of them kind of recount her first hit of the year. It came against Seaside, I think, and it was a key line drive that helped get them back in that game and ultimately win. And I think just going back to her from a young age, I think the common thread that's kind of been part of her baseball journey is just how hard she's had to work for it. I think one thing she mentions is kind of growing up, like, didn't immediately necessarily hit that she was going to be physically I guess less than them, or whereas boys kind of grow taller and bigger and stronger. She didn't quite realize that right away until she got a little bit older, but she was told many times, like, you're going to have to work 3 times as hard to be able to compete with these guys. And I heard from one Evergreen teammate who said that she's one of the hardest workers they've ever met, and how she tackles things in the weight room and just her training regimen and everything. And then obviously just kind of her toughness and grittiness, I think is something that's kind of really inspired other people at Evergreen. So yeah,
because I mean, certainly it's not usual, but it's not exactly rare either to hear about on a little league team, 10, 11, 12 years old, there's a girl. I mean, that's a lot of girls go through that growth spurt before boys do at that age.
Right.
And we all remember when, in early middle school or whenever, when the girls suddenly seemed like taller, but then biology has its own timeline. And of course, by the time you get into high school, that's when testosterone starts kicking in for men. They grow bigger, stronger, faster. Suddenly the pitchers are throwing with a lot more gas.
Right.
Besides working hard, what has Maile done to kind of adjust to her competitors that are now, bigger, stronger, faster, throwing the ball harder, and just making the game more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's just always kind of been used to that. Like, from a young age, she played on campus's Little League All-Star team and showed that she was like right there with them. But yeah, I mean, I think a key part of it just goes back to the hard work, and she obviously had to go through some challenges as well that we'll discuss as well a little bit later. But Yeah, I think just she's had a lot of baseball experience in her life. Started as a JV player as a freshman and was able to make varsity and prove that she had a spot here. And then she's played on an all girls team before and has been exposed to other players nationally as well. So I think she just has a pretty diverse baseball experience that she brings to the table as well.
Well, you mentioned nationally, and I think what's fascinating about a story like this is it does sort of play into a national trend of at the professional level, women starting to carve a little bit more of a role in that.
Right.
You talk about, I mean, going back a few years, Kim Ng with the Miami Marlins becoming the first general manager in
Right.
Major League history. And then you have Rachel Bakovic as the manager of a minor league team in the Yankees organization, and even last year, Ronnie Gajownik, the Hillsborough Hops manager, showing that women not only are taking on more roles in professional baseball as, say, in the analytics department
Right.
and the strength and conditioning, but also being in the dugout and putting together a lineup. I mean, and we'd be remiss to not mention, probably the strongest local connection to this, and that's Kelsey Ankers, the
Right.
Very successful Ridgefield softball coach, who before taking over for her father as coach of the Spudders, she was the first female varsity baseball coach in Oregon high school state history down in Grants Pass.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of examples of that. I think for Natalie Evans, for example, I think that's kind of a route that she is very much interested in pursuing, and getting into something like sports management, and eventually becoming either working in a front office or in an analytics department or as an equipment manager or anything like that. And I think you're seeing more and more of these paths that are opening up for women in baseball, and I think it's obviously here to stay. And then even on the playing side, I mean, it's still kind of few and far between in college. I know Olivia Pichardo at Brown kind of made history a few years ago by being the first D1 baseball player, women's baseball player, I should say, to appear in a game. And then something that was interesting too, kind of coming up in the research for this, is an organization called Baseball for All, which is kind of this nonprofit organization that's kind of trying to create more, gender equity and kind of, create more opportunities for women, whether it's playing or coaching or in other roles in baseball, like we mentioned. But they've put on these national and international tournaments for all girls teams. I found out recently, even at the club level in college, they have a tournament. So schools like USC and I want to say Western Washington and Cal Poly have these club women's baseball teams, and then I also, we were just talking not long before this with our colleague Tim Martinez. I guess even in a few states, it's a sanctioned high school sport, so it seems to be growing, certainly. And even though there's only a couple examples locally, I think it's kind of opening our eyes to the possibilities for girls and women to be involved in baseball, and it's a really neat thing to see.
All right, well, success doesn't come without challenges, and you alluded to some of the challenges specifically Maile has faced, because in addition to just taking on a game that, as its players grow older and bigger and stronger and faster, it becomes more difficult. There still are some boundaries, and certainly Maile has encountered a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, so just kind of to go back to early high school days, she plays Evergreen as a freshman on JV. She plays for a summer ball team, I believe the summer after, and just kind of encountered a pretty negative experience with that. Frankly, she didn't talk a ton about that. I don't think it was something that was really she wanted to revisit. But the key takeaway, I think, is just that she had a negative experience, something with coaches and players, and just kind of feeling challenged by that, and as a team not really bonding and not really connecting, and it was enough for her to decide to walk away from high school baseball as a sophomore, and wasn't totally sure that she would return. And I think sadly just about every girl who's played baseball, I think, has encountered something like that at some point, whether it's a coach or a player or an opponent or a parent who's just kind of still, opposed to the idea of a girl playing baseball on a predominantly boys team. But to her credit, she decided to come back, and Evergreen's coach Chad Burchett was a key part of that. Recruited her to come back this year, and knew that she would be a huge asset to them on varsity. And although she was on the fence about it initially, she ended up showing up for tryouts the first day, and I know they were all thrilled about that. And yeah, just somebody who's really kind of been welcomed at Evergreen, I think, and thankfully it's a positive environment for her and for the Plainsmen as well.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. What sort of reception was she given by her teammates? What do her teammates feel about having her being one of them?
Yeah, I think a quote that sticks out was, I talked to one of her teammates, Jason Whedon, who said, this team is a brotherhood, and Miley's now part of that brotherhood, and she's a sister with them, and she's part of it, and they're working together. And I think she brings a different perspective to the team that's unique, but I think something that they all respect and have learned from. And then not only that, but really an interesting anecdote too, and talking to Chad Burchett about this, was just that a few coaches on Evergreen staff have daughters, and they have their daughters have kind of grown to be in awe a little bit of somebody like Miley to be suiting up on a high school baseball team. Chad Burchett was talking about how his daughter, has grown up obviously around this Evergreen team. He's been the coach there, I think, for like 16 years, and this is the first time that there's been a girl who's played, and she's always asking like, "How's Miley doing?" And I think it's really neat to see that. And then Miley has kind of felt that on the flip side from younger girls who want to wear her jersey or want to come out to games and stuff. And I think it's just a really inspirational thing, and it's neat to see all around.
Well, I mean, I don't think I tuned into the significance of someone or a story like that until I had my own daughters, and suddenly I grew up in a family where I had a brother. I didn't there were not a lot of and now I'm a girl dad, and so it was sort of like opened my eyes to, well, even if my daughters say don't want to follow exactly in someone like Miley's footsteps and play baseball, it can serve as an inspiration for anyone who wants to enter a traditionally male-dominated field, or
Right.
even if it's not in a male-dominated field, be able to advocate for yourself if it comes to something like pay disparity or any sort of issue where you find yourself, whether it's a gender-based issue or something completely different, where you're maybe swimming against the current.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we always come back to this, that high school sports are really about lessons for life, and life that you encounter after you graduate from these 4 years in your high school. And so I'm sure that Miley's going to go on to use this experience to do great things, but then everyone else who whether they're in that dugout or in the dugout across, can see that you don't have to always swim with the current to make a mark.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have the same experience. I grew up with just a younger brother, and it was kind of the same thing. And these two stories in particular that I've seen in the past 2 years, I think have been really eye-opening, and just proof that the girls can do anything. And it's neat to see that two in our backyard are making a difference in this way, playing high school baseball.
All right. Anything else you want to add? Anything that kind of emptying out your reporter's notebook that maybe didn't make it into print, that you saw, you noticed, you sort of observed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, to be honest, there weren't a lot of like quotes or anecdotes that were left out in this one. I felt like it was one of those stories that needed the proper length. And I know Jeff Klein sometimes says that I go a little long on these feature stories, but this was one that I felt like was necessary to get it all out there. But no, I think I think overall, just Miley, even though she was on the fence about coming back, I think a key part of her wanting to come back was just to play with some of these teammates that she, bonded with as freshmen. And even though she had that year off, I think there was still kind of a mutual respect among them. And I think they were on both sides just really thrilled that she came back, and I think it's just been a really positive experience for everyone involved this year.
All right. Well, be sure to, if you want to check out that story, be sure to check it out on Columbian.com or 360preps.com. Also, we posted some links on our Instagram account, 360 or at 360 preps. And so be sure to follow us throughout the spring season. We're just getting going. Spring has its own tempo, but really after spring break, it kind of starts moving toward the league title chases and the bigger track and field meets and some of the other events that lead us to the culmination of not only the spring season, but the academic year coming up in May. So be sure to follow us on all our accounts. We'll be back next week. And of course, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy this weather while it hopefully turns and dries up a little bit. We will see you.